President Biden attended his first G7 summit over the weekend as U.S. Commander-in-Chief. The president and other world leaders discussed many global challenges, including how to bring an end to the deadly coronavirus pandemic. Biden joined them in pledging to donate more than 1 billion additional vaccine doses to nations around the world. One such country in desperate need is India, which broke the record last week for the most COVID deaths in a single day. Samir Kapadia is here to discuss. He is the Principal and Chief Operating Officer at the Vogel Group and is a policy expert on U.S.-India relations. Thank you so much for joining us. We have done a number of stories and had a number of conversations about the state of COVID in India, which we will get around to. But before we hit that, I want to ask you, what were the general issues discussed over the weekend at the G7 summit, rather?
Thanks so much for having me. You know, it's a really good question. I think one of the key sort of themes of this year's summit was about open societies, dealing with climate change, cybersecurity, COVID, but also China. There was a lot of veiled references towards China and how the global community should respond to a lot of the military aggression, and generally the origination of COVID has been a longstanding issue with a lot of countries who want some transparency around. So together, I think they're addressing quite a bit of different platforms, but without question, COVID was on top of everyone's mind.
So I presume that, as well as others, was among the critical issues brought up that were more specific to India. So that is my question. What were the issues that were brought up that were more specific to India? And do we know yet how the 1 billion donated vaccines will be divided?
Yeah, it's going to be something we're going to have to watch and track. Now, we know that President Biden has made a formal announcement that out of the 1 billion doses that they've committed, 500 million will come from the United States. In fact, 200 million of those are scheduled to go from the United States this year, while the remaining 300 million will come out next year before August. And there are a variety of multinational institutions that will play roles in facilitating that. There's UNICEF, there's CEPI, Gavi, and a number of others, including the World Health Organization. So we'll see how they end up getting a lot of this aid to countries around the world. But frankly, India hasn't been pegged to receive any sort of allotment or any sort of timeline yet. And I think President Biden has yet to really discuss how his India policy is going to be moving forward. Now, we know Prime Minister Modi, when he spoke at the G7 conference, pledged this whole concept of one world, one health. This notion that we all need to develop strategies to respond to the pandemic as a global community. And he's really pleading with the world to even roll back some of the waivers that they've had in the past around intellectual property. Prime Minister Modi wants to manufacture more vaccines in India. And unfortunately, he's unable to do that unless restrictions are lifted at the WTO level. And in fact, I think many of the G7 members might be amenable to that if there's enough pressure at the WTO level. So we'll see how it's playing out. But currently, there's no allocation towards India from this G7 summit that we can say is a positive light.
When you talk about restrictions at the WTO level, you're talking about the type of restrictions that make it difficult to acquire the raw materials, to acquire some of the technology that's essential. So even if you do lift the patents, it'll be difficult for India to sort of move forward and make more of this vaccine?
100%. And I think that there's some structural issues in India itself where they need to readdress how they're looking at the vaccine manufacturing process, how they're looking at deploying the vaccine. Now, remember, there's a few statistics here that are important. In May of this year, India was seeing 400,000 cases of COVID a day. Now, thankfully, that number is around 84,000 a day. So clearly they're doing something right. It has a lot to do with the lockdowns. But Prime Minister Modi has made a lot of strategic missteps in this process of procuring the vaccine. In fact, he only started making major purchases in January of this year. And he was so focused on price negotiations and going through a single source supplier that he didn't really get the quantities that he needed to fulfill this kind of urgent level. And then in addition, the Serum Institute of India, which is the main manufacturer of vaccines, in fact, they're the largest manufacturer of vaccines globally, has gone through some significant challenges as well. They had a factory fire. They were complaining about not getting raw materials from the United States, which came out in a tweet directly to President Biden. And even the CEO was receiving some threats, which led him to actually flee India. He's in the United Kingdom right now. So now Prime Minister Modi is at this inflection point where he says, I need to look outward and get more support from the global community. And I think that President Biden might very well support him in that measure to counter China.
Well, it's a pity that he couldn't actually attend in person, but that's the primary reason that he couldn't attend in person, because of yet another wave of COVID. Hopefully his words, land on the ears that can really make a difference. Samir Kapadia, thank you so much.
Thank you.